your generational trauma can be that you can actually get through it. And I think when you understand shadow work and understand how to turn things around and really understand that it's actually only your perception, you can't actually say for 100% accuracy that it's what you think it is.
Yeah.
It makes things look so differently, and you can have a little bit more compassion for other people. And compassion and love win every day of the week with me.
Yeah.
That helps you get through so much.
Yeah, like I recently, sorry, Juliet, you go.
No, you go.
I recently learned that from a masculine, from a male, I learned that because being a female, I understand the feminine trials and tribulations, the potholes that I've had to deal with, the prejudice, all of the stuff that comes along with being a woman, right? The judgment, the path that I've walked as a woman in this world, I've experienced it, but I haven't experienced what it's like to be a man. And so relating to men and talking to men and things like that, and having the masculine voice in my life has been a huge curiosity for me. Like, I've asked many questions, and I recently learned that the masculine is feeling all sorts of stuff at the moment, and being feeling attacked, feeling that they like guilt, massive guilt from the masculine for things like the Me Too movement, from, you know, all the way back to burning witches and all of that stuff. There's all this coming down the pipeline for the masculine, and they're dealing with it now. And I see these decisions that were made by the masculine generations ago coming up in the masculine now to be dealt with, the shadow stuff, all the stuff that's coming up. And I was actually really amazed. I was like, wow, the masculine now is starting to deal with it. They're starting to see because, you know, if you don't know that you've hurt someone, you can't deal with it. But the feminine voice, I think, has been heard now. The feminine voice has been heard. And, you know, women have been brave enough to come out and say, this is what happened to me. This is my experience in the world. And the masculine has gone, holy cow. Oh, I'm so sorry that happened. And they're feeling guilty about it. And I had no clue that was happening, that they were feeling that guilt. It was like a huge eye-opener to me. But it was something that they didn't do themselves. So the men in today's society may not have burned witches or been part of the Me Too movement, but they're feeling it, and they're dealing with it, and they are feeling sad about it and guilty about it and want to apologize. And that to me was like, wow, I see it now. I understand it. I can see why they're feeling that. And dealing with it now is like, wow, this is so great that they're dealing with it. But on the other side, it wasn't their fault. It's like the Indigenous argument, you know, the Indigenous people had all that stuff happen to them in the past, particularly I'm talking about here in Australia. And our generation is feeling it. We're feeling the sorrow that came from the past. And I really believe that the feelings come up now to be dissipated, because I think we're in a point in history where we can deal with it. We can say sorry. Where our shoulders are big enough to do it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's why we all came down in this time, and this time right now, because we are the ones that can hold that on our shoulders. We are the activators. We are the ones that can sit there and look at things from a different perspective. And I think being able to heal the past helps you to move forward. When we're stuck in the past and we're too worried about the future, we're not in the now. And now is the sweet spot.
Mm.
Because that's the only thing that we ever know for sure. I don't know if in the next 5 minutes I'm going to take another breath. I can assume,
Yeah.
but I don't really know. And if I'm constantly living in the past and regurgitating that whole, there's nothing wrong with history and understanding history. But the reason why I like history is to learn how to be better, is to see things from all perspectives, not just one, right?
Yeah.
Because when there's fighting, right, this culture or this person, this group of people have been in, like, they've been fighting for years. Certain religions, certain countries, it's all been fighting for years, and it's been instilled in them and regurgitated constantly that they're right and they're wrong, and nobody's seeing that they've got the same traumas, that they're just fighting their own people because we are all one. And it's frustrating from my perspective, because I just want everyone to love each other, right? And I can see it from both sides of the coin. So I'm really hard to debate with when people start saying, "Oh, but this is wrong and this is wrong." It's like, yeah, but can you see? Imagine if it was the other way, that they're doing it to each other. You know, it's two wrongs don't make a right. How about you realize that this isn't working? It's only creating more division. But again, the powers that be, they like to throw shit in there to keep it flames on the fire.
Yeah.
Keep us.
I think it's actually something that just dropped in for me while we were talking, or while I was listening to you guys talking, is that fact of how big of a topic generational trauma is, because we do have that micro aspect where it's your family, the individual family, my family, that there's that generational trauma. But then, like, you go into the whole history, like you go into your own ancestry, how you mentioned, Jen, like, what do you do when you're a whole group of different cultures, and like there's so much to explore there, and not even just like trauma wise, I mean in any capacity, culture wise. But then you have, as a whole planet, we share a giant trauma of like our own world history, like the way that we lived just 100 years ago. Like, I was actually just talking to a friend on the phone, and she was telling me how she was helping run this retreat, and like it was very witchy, and she like mentioned like it's so weird because not that long ago, doing these things that we did in this retreat, we would have been killed for, like not even like 200 years ago. And this is just like one tiny speck of the trauma that we went through. Like, this was the world that wasn't that long ago, and people alive still remember that, like World
Yeah.
War II. Like, and it's like a domino effect, and it impacts so many points of society, that generational trauma, like, the last thing you have to worry about is your own family almost. Like, anytime you walk out of the house, you're going to face it in some capacity. And that's not in a negative, I don't mean that in a negative way, but like, honestly, it is everywhere. The way that greed, I think the reason why we are such a greedy society sometimes, and consumeristic, and all these like quote unquote negative horrible traits that we have, come from our history as humanity. Like, we really hurt each other, like really badly, like tortured each other. And like that still like that carries on. Like that doesn't just like go away from one or two generations that didn't live it. Like it's still very much a prominent part of society. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that I didn't really think about. Like we all have giant collective generational
Yeah.
traumas that we all have, like every single one. If you're a human, you have it, and it's all collective. And I think that's where we kind of go back to what you were saying, Jen, about you as an individual person, because you have like two twins and same upbringing, same everything, but they turn out completely different. And that's the
Yeah.
same on that grand scale because we all live on this planet with this world history, and we all have different experiences, yes, but we all turn out and choose different choices. So I think it really does lead back to the choices that we make as a person and as an individual.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I just realized that while you guys were talking.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. I think it also comes like the only thing that we can ever control in the world. And this is where, like, I know a lot of people they fall down rabbit holes or they get so consumed in the world that's happening around them. Like I say it too, I'm the powers that be and all that kind of stuff, right? Because it's a truth for me. I see it. But the one thing that we can control are ourselves, our own choices.
Mm,
So if we can learn different perspectives and then start to choose different, that's where the change comes. That's how
yeah.
we do it. We in our own backyard. And that's not saying not to think or help other countries or other people, but reality is the only real change that you can make right now is within yourself. So it's how you're treating other people, what you're saying, the words that you're using, right? The compassion that you show people. Michael Jackson said it best: start with the man or the woman in the mirror, and that's
Mm,
how we change the world. I personally believe. Like you
yeah.
I
can't
think you're
fix
right.
the past, you can't change it, but we can learn from it, and we can, whether this be from a world perspective or from, family perspective, we can
Mm,
change it.
yeah.
Nothing can not fixed. You know what I mean, or made better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a
I
process
really,
though, because I think what happens is you go through a, an awakening process. Like you start to realize, you start to see, you start to become aware of the trauma. You start to like looking in the mirror first is, wow, that's my face. When you look in the mirror, you kind of go, oh, that's me. And then you start to see the parts of yourself that are broken, and you start to grieve it. Like there's a process that happens, and then once you're aware, then the sadness comes, and then once you've dealt with the sadness, you then deal with the anger, and then you have to deal with, there's like, it's not just oh, I want to be different and then you're different. Like there's a whole
No.
process
Yeah.
that goes into actually changing something.
Mm-hmm.
Like it starts with the decision to look at yourself, and then, through that whole process, you get to the end and you say, okay, the reason I'm doing this is because I want it to be different for myself and I want it to be different for my family.
Mm-hmm.
And that process is what I think people get afraid of. And
Yeah.
they're like, if I look at myself in the mirror, what am I going to find? It's like a fearful thing. And
Yeah.
that's what we all, you know, what the world needs to do is
Yeah.
for change to happen, is to
Yeah.
actually say, okay, I'm going to be brave here, and I'm going to look in the mirror, and I'm going to see where I'm falling down, and I'm going to put the effort into changing that.
mm,
Yeah. I think it's got a lot to do with the meanings that we give words too, right?
Yeah.
Um, when it comes to forgiveness.
Mm.
Some people are like, I will never forgive that person, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Or
It's
yourself.
forgiveness. Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
forgiveness to me, what I've come to realize is forgiveness isn't for anybody else. It's like it's acceptance that's more
Yeah, it's a
important.
release. Yeah.
Yeah, it's accepting that a shitty thing has happened. You cannot change it, and you may
Yeah.
not want to forgive them for what they did because it might be that traumatic or for whatever reason. You don't have to forgive them, right? But you can accept it. Acceptance, I feel, is so much more powerful than forgiveness,
Yeah.
right? Acceptance, because you don't have to forgive. Like
Yeah.
forgiveness is,
Stop
don't
fighting.
get me wrong, you can have that compassion, but the more you hold on to that anger, the more you hold on to whatever it is that's bubbling up and that makes you think, I'm not going to forgive them,
Yeah.
you're actually not able to let that go. So
And
that's
move
weighing you
on.
down. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why whenever I talk about forgiveness or letting things go, it's you don't ever really let them go because they're always a part of your memory,
Yeah.
but they don't affect you the same way when you
Yeah.
accept them
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you
You're doing
move
yourself a
forward.
service.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Funny
I
that we
think
talk about
that takes
oh,
doing
okay.
that takes love for yourself, doesn't it? Like if somebody says to you, you're not forgiving them by by letting them off the hook, you're forgiving them so that you can heal and you can move on from the incident that happened or from trauma or whatever.
Yeah,
For you to say, okay, yeah, it's worth it to do that. I want to be free. It takes a lot of self-respect
yeah,
and willingness
concept.
to want to do it.
Yeah, and that's hard. It's funny that we're talking about mirror stuff because I've just launched my 21-day challenge. It's a free challenge for mirror work. So it's looking in the mirror and getting comfortable with what you look like and who you are
Yeah.
and seeing
Yes.
yourself for who you really are. And I think like sometimes people probably look at it and think, oh, that's a load of shit. What would I want to look in the mirror for?
Yeah.
The question is, why did you just say that? You know,
Mm.
why why do you struggle looking in the mirror? Why do you not want to? There's things there that need to, sorry, it's plane going over. There's things there that need to be worked through, make
Yeah.
yourself feel better about that, and this really helped me on my journey to understand myself more, to see who I really was and who I wanted to be, not who I was showing up as,
Yeah.
because we all wear these masks, right? Because trying to please others and trying to fit into society, the societal norms and all the rest of it. But when we start to unpack that and we can start to show self-compassion and self-love, and it brings out that self-confidence, it brings out that self-awareness. And when you've got that self-awareness, your perception on everything else changes as well. Because if
Yeah.
I can change
And
hard belief about myself, I've got the ability to change it with others as well.
yeah, so true. That's what I was about to say. It gives you you then move into the position of being the captain of your own ship. When you have
Mm-hmm.
that awareness, you can then start to create from that place. Is this what I
Yes.
want? You're no longer subconscious about the decisions that you're making. You're no longer just moving away from things because you're afraid of them, or saying, I don't
Mm-hmm.
like that person because you've judged the clothes that they're wearing. And so you never get to know that person when that person might end up being your best friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things like that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I've just lost it. I had something drop in for me, but it's gone. I squirreled for a moment. Sorry.
I was
Um,
gonna I was
it'll come back.
gonna yeah, interrupt me anytime when it pops back in, Jen. But yeah, I was just gonna say I think it's the ultimate power move to forgive. I think that's the ultimate power move. And I think when we talk about overcoming generational trauma, like it's not a simple thing to just forgive. I'm not saying like, well, there's your answer, because that's not fair, and that's also not fully true sometimes, especially with deep things like mother wounds, father wounds. You can't just forgive. Like it's not that easy. But I think once you eventually reach that point, that's like that's that's the point where you do heal it. It's not about dissecting it. It's not about how like one of the first things you said was, I'm not a person who looks to heal, like searches for healing, or and
Mm.
I think sometimes I've definitely been a person to search for healing, especially with generational trauma. But
Mm.
sometimes all it is figuring out a way, or sometimes not even figuring out a way, but inviting a way to forgive. And I know yeah, sometimes it can be a very complicated subject because family is so, like, they're your blood, you know? Um,
Yeah.
but it's definitely like it's that final step, I think. It's that bridge that you walk. Forgiveness is the bridge to the other side, I think, a lot of the
Yes.
time.
Well
Yeah.
put.
Yeah, and I think too, when we go back to that mother-father stuff, or even anybody really, if we're able to, like a good technique I like to use to give myself that different perspective is literally trying to put yourself in their position, knowing what you know about their story, but knowing that people are only ever going to tell you what they want you to know, that there's
Yeah.
Mm.
always, like the iceberg, it always
Yeah.
goes so much deeper than that. So, although we think we know a person's story, there's so much underneath that we don't know,
Mm.
and half we're assuming stuff. So, when
Yeah.
we get angry at our parents or at people, we have to stop and realize that they were once children too.
Yeah.
And they had parents that probably did stuff as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then that's when we can find that compassion. That's when we
Yeah.
can find that. And it's not saying it can be like, oh, I forgive you. I'm so sorry. You must have gone through a lot. I'm not saying that. But when you've got such strong anger and for trauma there, when you're able to find that little bit of light, that tiny littlest bit of compassion, that's all you need to start. That's all you need to, that one little speck of light in the darkness can make a whole lot of difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
That's
true.
so true. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know where to
How
move
long
on
have you
from
been
there.
going, Juliet?
38 minutes.
Oh, cool. So, but Jen, the one thing that I wanted to talk about, because in my experience, what Juliet just said about um, allowing yourself to, like, I think it followed in, Juliet said something and it followed into your comment about putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. It was something
Yeah.
about generational. And what dropped in for me was um, my situation was quite unique because I was adopted and I didn't know I was adopted until I was 26.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that was a
26.
huge, yeah, I was 26 when I found out. And I didn't find out through my parents. I found out through my birth mother. She wrote me a letter. And the reason why I received the letter, because if the letter had come to the house and my mother had seen it, because I was still living at home, I would never have received the letter. So the letter was meant to find me because I had a boyfriend living with me in my parents' house, and he brought the mail in that day, and put my letter on my dressing table. So my mother never saw the letter. And because she used to open my mail all the time, if she didn't know who the letter was from, she would open it all the time. All the time we're talking here, right? So, and it used to drive me insane. And I used to say to her, why are you opening my mail? And she would always say, oh, sorry, I don't know, I misread it, or I didn't realize it wasn't mine, or whatever she would say. There was always an excuse. But this day, the letter got to me, and I opened it, and next day I called the lady who'd written this letter to tell her that I wasn't her child, and I'm so sorry that for some reason, she sent the letter to me, but I'm not adopted. And then that started the journey to finding out that actually I was adopted. And I took, in that moment, when I found out that actually I was adopted, I had chose subconsciously to leave my body. We talk about embodiment. That was the opposite that happened to me, and I left my body by subconscious choice, because I remember it happening. And then from that moment on, walking that experience in my life, I remember it as watching a movie. I don't remember it as me being the person that it was all happening to. She's gone.
Oh, sorry.
There she is.
Funny.
Yeah, and so so then from that moment on, I remember it as though I was watching a movie. And it wasn't until many, many, many years later that I understood what had happened to me, that I had left my body, and how to come back. It wasn't until after I got married and had kids and everything. So it took me, but I will say it's the best decision I ever made, was to come back to my body. It was a long journey, because I had to realize that I had left my body, and I had separated my emotional, like my feeling body and my actual body had separated. Yeah. And so it was like, I didn't even know that could happen. And all of that stuff was going on, and I didn't know why. I knew the feelings. I knew that I thought I was watching a movie when it was all going on. I knew all of that, but I didn't know why. And I didn't have the emotional information, like I didn't have the knowledge that I needed to find my way back to myself, until life started to move on. Like my life moved on, and I continued down the journey of Claudia's life, and things were going on, and I was like, why is this? Why is that? And like, I got curious about things, and why is this happening to me, and things like that. And then once I started to get curious and ask questions, the answers started to come. And then I started to realize, oh, I left my body when that happened, and I need to come back into my body. And once that journey began, then that was the amazing thing about being curious and wanting to come back, was that all of this other stuff then started to open up, and all these other answers started coming in. And then that was the road I was on now, to forgiving and to seeing the situation, because I was reeling. I was like, how can I be in this soap opera? How can this be happening? Like, I was 26. How can I walk through my life for 26 years and not know that I was adopted. Like all these questions came in. And then once I started to answer all of that and start my road to forgiveness and opening up the whole can of worms of the family drama and the decision making, how they decided to adopt and how it all happened, and everything started to become clear to me, that's when I could start to see my parents as human beings and now I don't just have those parents, I've got a whole other set to think about. I've got my parents who raised me, and now I've got the DNA parents as well. And so I had to then open up that Pandora's box and work through all the stuff. And I think going through that experience and learning how to put myself in the position of both my mum and dad on this side and my mum and dad on that side, it opened me up to so much more compassion. I'm not saying I'm perfect, because I'm not.
No.
Juliet, that. But I think I've got a wider perspective of people because of my decision to come back into my body and heal whatever it was, the decision to leave, and the decision to find out who my parents were, all of that, the road that I had taken. And I think it helped me, that decision helped me, and it also helped my kids and my, the people who were in my life, the closest ones to me. It didn't just affect me, it affected everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And see, that's what I absolutely love about this type of work too, is when we start to work on ourselves, it ripples out around us. Like people see the changes and the difference. And I don't know, it's got something to do with energetics, I feel. And while we're healing, we're also healing them. Like, they've still got their own stuff to go through, but it's not as hard. It's not always as hard. I can't say it's not as hard, because sometimes it is, but it's not always as hard when you've got someone.
It's like walking
mental.
through the jungle, and the first person is macheting the foliage and making the path, like they've walked it, so the vegetation is already tramped down and there's a path to follow. It's sort of like that, if you want to put it in a visual, a visual thing. It's like the first person to walk through the jungle.
Yeah. And if you look at it on the flip side too, the old way used to be walking through the jungle and not even caring, and just letting the weeds and the bushes smack the next person in the face, right? Because that's exactly when you started seeing that, I was like, I can see where that's going. And then I was like, yeah. And then before that, before they had axes and realized that they could chop these things away rather than letting them smack themselves back in the face, they just used to just boom.
They'd walk through just with their hands or whatever.
Yeah. But I think it's also made a lot of the older generations bitter, and not everybody, don't get me wrong, don't come for me, people, but like hard to crack. And some people don't want to even try and think about doing the work. They're just happy, well, they're not happy, but they're just, this is just me, and they don't realize that they can change, or it's too late for me. What's the point? Da, 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 da. It's never too late. And your life, when you start to unpack this stuff, you can attest to this too, right? When you start to unpack it, when you start to break down the generational trauma, your life is so much lighter. I know mine is.
Yeah. And when you start to realize that you actually, life is happening for you, not to you. I think that's the biggest, that's a huge distinction here.
Yeah.
because I could have seen this whole thing that had happened as, oh, my life is ruined. My parents lied to me about who I was as a person, my
Yeah.
very identity. I
Yeah.
could have gone down that bitter route and said, oh, I can't trust anyone. This people are just, I could have gone down that road quite easily. But I knew somewhere inside myself, I knew that that was going to ruin my life. I didn't want to carry the burden of that bitterness for the rest of my
Mm.
life. I didn't want to do that. That's a heavy burden,
Yeah.
you know?
Like, even
And
when you said it, I was like, I couldn't imagine. Like,
yeah,
that would almost be me getting told my parents are my biology. I would probably leave my body too, because that's a big thing, man. And amazing that you're able to journey down that way and go the way that you did.
yeah.
Mm.
And I kind of think that this is going to sound it's going to sound self-effacing, but I want to say it in the, and have it understood that I'm not being mean to myself when I say this. But I think it had to be that big for it to have the effect that it did on me, because
Mm.
I don't scare easily. And I've realized that about myself. I don't scare easily. It has to be something like that, so big for it to really get in,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because I'm just discovering now over the past couple of years how broad my shoulders are, and um, how strong I am, and how much I can, take in this world. And I think it had to be that big for me to listen, and for me to change, and for me to leave my body and then realize I'd left my body and come back. Like, it was all done in a way, it all happened in a way. It wasn't done to me, but it happened in a way that made me listen, and made me change, and made me wake up, and made me the person that I am today.
Mm.
Because, yeah, it to another person, it may have destroyed them and made them, do something different. But for me, it
Mm.
happened exactly how it was supposed to for me.
Yeah. I think, yeah, for some people turn to drugs, right? Some people turn to that numbing sense because they don't want to feel
Mm.
it because it hurts too much.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not to say that they're any weaker. I don't think. I think it's just
No.
everybody finds their own way to deal with things. Um,
Yeah.
I think kudos to the people that can get through it without that stuff, because working in the government agencies where I was dealing with homelessness, drug and alcohol addiction, um, domestic violence on a day-to-day basis for 8 years. I took that stuff home and it affected me. Like, because I'm
Yeah.
such an empath, it was massive. And
Yeah.
prior to that, I used to be, if you take drugs, you're a fuckwit. You're
Yeah.
shitting your life up the wall. I was so judgmental on it, right?
Yeah.
Don't look how you live your life. You're wasting it. Why would you do that? What about your family? What about this? But when you are stuck in that mindset and how deep that pain can go,
Yeah.
and how that those feelings of unworthiness and stuff, it's no wonder people, like, if you end up homeless, even if you've come from having a job and a family and all that kind of stuff, you only have to be homeless for not even a week, and no doubt you're going
Mm.
to end up with some type of mental health. So
Yeah.
Yes.
the people that are able to do that without turning to that, I think they're amazing. I think that's strength. Um,
Yeah.
and I can't imagine what would have gone on in their head sometimes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because
I think
tough,
just as
right?
much as someone can be addicted to, say, drugs, right?
Mhm.
I think you can also be addicted to denial. You can always
Yeah,
also be addicted to positivity, like
yeah,
you
Yeah,
just,
choose your poison, you know.
yes,
It is very, very, very true. And I
yeah,
think
yeah.
also, um, it was really funny. This millionaire did an experiment where he put all of his money away into an account and he gave himself a year to go from homeless to a millionaire. And it was like a whole social experiment. And I don't think he ended up being able to do it, and he became massively traumatized from it. Like he was trying to prove a point, saying even when you're homeless, you can make it in this world. But
yeah,
we really, really don't know unless you're there. You don't know. Like
Mm.
you can never. Yeah, because I was in that same space, like very judgmental over drugs, very judgmental over like how you could let your life loose like that, like and
mm,
just be a shell of a human. But
Yeah,
yeah, you never know these people and what they've gone through and you know, when you are judging people that for choosing this addiction, it's so ironic because like then we're on our phone scrolling, you know,
yeah,
however many hours a day, and that's in some cases just as bad, like to be
yeah,
honest. It's
yeah,
the
yeah,
exact same thing, becoming a shell of a human. Like I really
yeah.
feel like when you
It's
go
more
down,
socially acceptable too.
yeah, but it's
mm,
socially acceptable, yeah. Or alcohol, you know.
Mm,
mm.
Alcohol is just as bad as drugs, baby. Like
yeah,
it really, really is.
You know what? We went down to Melbourne a couple months back, or yeah, about a month or so, a couple months back, and the gentleman that was running we did the whole Melbourne jail, and we got to get arrested, and it was pretty fun. But he was telling us stuff, and he's like, it's not heroin or ice that's the massive killer. You know what the silent killer is? Alcohol.
well, yes,
It's because it's readily available. You can get access to it, right? It's in our faces everywhere. It's the culture, and it's kills you slowly. It
yeah,
not
Yeah,
only kills you, but it kills your relationships if you use it that way, right?
yeah,
yeah.
So,
And
and
yeah,
that was a really
it's
big opener for me.
when you're
yeah,
addicted to it, it's one of the most dangerous things to come off of. The come down
Yeah,
is actually not only like, you know, meth is one thing. Like people don't, the reason meth is addictive is because the come down is so bad emotionally or mentally. But on
yeah.
alcohol, physically, it is so dangerous. Like you can die sobering up from being an alcoholic. Like your
yeah,
body
I
can
literally,
literally die.
I literally had an uncle. It was my dad's uncle who was an alcoholic, and he ended up in hospital when he was not really well. Um, his wife had to bring a bottle of gin or something into him so they could give him a shot every day because he needed it to function.
Yeah,
Now that massive, like don't get me
yeah,
wrong, I like my alcohol. I like a little
yeah,
buzz, but to feel like I need it to get up and just open my eyes and I don't know how that would I couldn't fathom it. And then
yeah,
to know if I don't have that, I could die. Like
yeah.
that would whoa.
I
That's
know.
massive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just so funny how things get so twisted,
Mm,
you know, in this
yeah.
life.
Because you don't
And
hear about alcoholism in the news as much as you hear about drugs, the war on
no,
drugs.
no,
Like
but
you said, Jen, it's like the silent killer.
mm, but
being
really
oh sorry,
the
no, you go.
majority. Oh, sorry, hon.
No, 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 you go. No, honestly.
I'm just gonna finish it off with saying the majority of the domestic violence stuff is stemmed from that. If it's not, if it's drugs, usually it's drugs and alcohol or alcohol.
Yeah.
That's what
It's, I was going to say, being in England, viewing it, it's actually very similar to Australia, to be honest. It is, I think it's a bit stronger here, like the alcohol culture, but it's so funny because I would tell any like Aussie bloke that, and they'll be like, "Oh no, it we love our beers more over here," and it's like a competition, like it's so ironic. Like, no, we're bigger alcoholics, like it's a brag, and that's what I
that's the
find the funniest thing.
that's a mine's bigger sort of thing,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, and it's like this competition. And that's what makes it like, I think that's what makes it so dangerous, to be honest, is that it's seen as you want to be an alcoholic, you want to be the bigger, you, being a lightweight is like, oh, you're a lightweight. Like, come on, toughen up. It's like, no, like, why,
Mm.
why
Yeah,
are we
this is
pushing
actually
that?
really, yeah, this is kind of interesting actually to finish our conversation on this note is like actually really cool because I think what we do as humans is to cover up our neuroses, alcoholism, you know, I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg, is to brag about it like that and to make it
Mm,
like I think deep down inside, we know that we're using these things as crutches and coping mechanisms. But we put these connotations on them, these meanings we attach to these unhealthy behaviors so that we don't have to talk about it. So that
Yeah,
that's a taboo subject. We're not gonna go there. I'm just gonna keep my macho card, in my pocket. And every time somebody says something or touches on it, I'm gonna whip it out and say, I'm proud to be Aussie and I'm proud to be a big drinker. It means I can take it. I'm more macho. I'm more of
yeah,
a man because I can drink more beers than that person, and it's like twisting something that's actually really unhealthy into a brag. And it's a technique
yeah.
that
yeah,
guys use and women. Oh God,
yeah.
I can't tell you how many women I've spoken to. And if you say something about drinking and they're like, even a tiny bit negative, oh, I'm not going out drinking with you, like I wouldn't want to go to the pub with you. And it's like, well, good, good. That's a good thing. I don't want to go to the pub with you either,
Mm,
because you view alcohol as a teetotaler.
Mm.
yeah,
It's
And
just interesting, I think.
yeah, and that even with like not even just alcohol, it's the masks that it's the
Yeah,
things that we tell ourselves to make ourselves feel better, but it's not really making us feel better. It's just suppressing stuff and creating more dis-ease in our body.
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
true.
Mm.
Oh,
Well, on that note, we've come to time.
mhm,
So, what a journey we've been on in this conversation.
yeah,
Yeah, we went everywhere, didn't we?
we really
Yeah,
did.
it was great. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
It's good.
Um, so turns out though, it didn't go live on Facebook, but we did record it, so I am gonna post it immediately after
Yeah,
stopping this. So all the people watching now, sorry it wasn't live. We're having issues with Zoom at the moment, and Mum, we should probably have a conversation about another option
yeah,
because it's been like
yeah,
three
because
times in a row.
Zoom and Facebook, their interface doesn't, they've put some kind of
Stop.
thing where they don't talk to each other as well
The,
anymore.
Facebook cancelled the third party.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So that's why we're navigating at the moment.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll talk about that for next week, Mum, and we'll hopefully
Yeah,
have another system in place.
yeah,
But this will be uploaded tonight anyway, or your morning. So
yeah.
yeah,
All right.
thank you so much, Jen. I really
No worries.
appreciated the conversation and all your input and all your wisdom. So
Yeah.
hopefully you'll come on again.
Yeah, I always love chatting to you girls. Thank you.
Okay,
Mwah.
beautiful. Well, thank you. Bye bye.